everybody, and welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be doing a what if that has been floating around in my head for about a year now. I'm really excited to be showing you guys this because it's such a cool alternate universe for the series. Fathom was always the level-headed, worried one in the group, but what if he became more like Albatross? What if he eventually descended down that dark path his grandfather and soon best friend would? The roles of characters are going to be a little switched here, with Fathom slowly taking on the antagonistic role. It's going to be a wild ride, and I hope you guys stick by until the end of it. This is going to be a part 1, and more will be coming soon. But before we begin, a huge shout out to my patrons: 𝙈𝙊𝙍𝙁𝙊, 3 Moons, 𝙒𝙚𝙀, and Fizz. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. Links to their social medias are in the description down below. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into the video. Fathom watches as Coconut went flying, the sand around him being flicked everywhere. The projectile landed directly as he commanded, hitting his grandfather Albatross in the chest. With a resounding crack, Albatross pulled away, clutching his abdomen with his claws and muttering a soft curse. He was clearly not expecting that. All Fathom could do was stare in awe, just as the wide-eyed dragonets around him. Spectating parents at the animus trial whisked their children away. There was a certain eye of fear in some of their faces, feeling Fathom had never seen anyone look at him with before. Fathom's gaze subconsciously wandered over to Indigo, who merely sat in the sand for a moment, her mouth wide open. "Why didn't you tell me that you were an animus? Why would you hide that from me? I wouldn't have cared." Fathom froze, hearing the droplet of betrayal in her voice, even though he hadn't hidden anything at all. He had no idea of any of this. "Indigo, Before he could continue, Albatross walked over, still clutching his chest with some of his talons. He stepped in between the two dragonets, holding a claw out to his grandson to greet him. "Congratulations on the discovery of your skill set," Albatross said dully. Fathom looked to the side and caught sight of Lagoon behind him, who was smiling with deep enthusiasm. After talking to a member of the council, she headed over, putting a claw on the young animus's shoulder. "I knew you were wrong, Albatross," she said, puffing her chest with pride. "There is another animus in the royal line." Albatross said nothing, though Fathom swore he could see his uncle grinding his canines inside his mouth. Whatever he was thinking, he dared not to say it out loud. Lagoon beamed over at Fathom. "You're going to do great things for me, young dragon. Oh, how amazing it is to have another animus in the family. I have so many plans your grandfather claims he's too powerless to do. Perhaps the magic of a dragon wears with age, but you're a fresh member of our youth, and a charming prince, I'm sure of it. You're perfect for what I have in store." Fathom couldn't bring himself to smile, so he only swallowed and nodded awkwardly. He couldn't shake off the looks on the watching SeaWing's faces. More importantly, the hint of sadness he heard in Indigo's few words. She was gone now, but he'd explained to her what happened, how he never knew about this power. Fathom looked down at his claws as the Lagoon bickered with the tired Albatross. Their words were nothing to him, lost to the wind in his own wandering mind. He lifted his talons out of the sand, watching and feeling as the clumps of it left his claws. My talons can do anything. Hadn't quite hit him now, but he knew it sure would. Someday. Fathom jumped away from a barrage of coconuts heading toward him. Moving his front legs in a circular motion and whispering an audible command, Albatross watched as all the top layer of sand around them came swirling. He shut his eyes quickly, casting his own spell in defense. "See, come up and wet this rising sand." The ocean obeyed the command of the old animus, sending water sprinkling down upon the two dragons. The sand fell, now damp and lifeless. "That was amazing," Fathom said, shaking the droplets off his scales. "Certainly an invigorating training session, was it not?" Albatross gave a wearied smirk, something his grandson rarely saw on his face. It stood out and brought life from the sagging black circles under his eyes and his chipped scales, drained of most of their color. "When's the next time we meet away like this? Without Lagoon or one of her advisors watching from behind the rocks?" the prince asked. Albatross's muscles noticeably tightened, but he kept a sense of coolness in his voice. "I don't know. We were lucky to escape supervision, even for this one session," Albatross said. "I assume things will return to how they were before by next week, especially with our busyness surrounding the construction of the new palace. The Queen wants to supervise production personally, or so she says." Albatross did not dare say the name of the queen, for every time he spoke of her, Fathom saw him bite his tongue until it bled, though his expression told nothing of what he was keeping inside. Fathom looked down at the ground as Albatross walked toward him. Lagoon always never keeps us out of her sight. Albatross said it's because she's scared of us, but why would she be? I know my grandfather heard a dragon in the past, but I've gotten these glimpses of how he truly is when she's not around. He has a good heart. I've seen it. The two headed to the palace, darkness above their heads, as they were enveloped in water. The ocean's currents would be enough to drag Irregular around, the very sea betraying them, but not the animi. The world beckoned at their call, obeying the words they spoke. The sea seemed to soften at their touch, but the waves were no longer free. Before Fathom's head was submerged, he swore he saw the body of a seagull bobbing up and down lifelessly on the waves. He squinted, but he was pulled below the current before he could see it again. Great winds erupted in fragmented gusts from above. Though submerged, every swimming felt the pull of the tide and the bending of the waves. The ocean thrashed around, lightning striking its surface. Not exactly the greatest day in the world to have visiting diplomats, Fathom thought solemnly, as he stuck his head out of the water. 2 SkyWings were arriving today to see the spectacles of the royal pavilion and hear of the splendors of the summer palace to come. Lagoon had been talking about the visit for months, preparing Fathom and Albatross on how to act. This night must go perfectly, Lagoon hissed. May mean loans and extended trade with the SkyWings, and we need a strong ally. The Mountain Tribe is third in power under the Nightwings and Icewings, and we must dig our claws into their position. It wasn't long after preparation that the 2 diplomats arrived, adorned in jewels and precious stones, clothed in scarlet. One was a princess, Fathom had heard, whose scales were the color of blood. She was fierce like her mother Carmine, and a future queen all the tribes wished to please. The ambassador Eagle accompanied her, flicking his tongue in and out as he eyed the pavilion. Lagoon was quick to greet them, wearing her finest pearls. Albatross and Fathom were without special jewelry, the queen insisting their powers were the true attestment of their wealth and strength. "It's wet," Eagle said, lifting his talons out of a deep puddle. Lagoon straightened herself, clearing her throat. "It is our rainy season, after all. Would you mind taking a look around? We have done quite amazing marvels here." The 2 SkyWings nodded, clearly unimpressed by the soaked pavilion and lashing rain. Thunder rumbled overhead, the sound dancing in Fathom's ears as he shifted his weight. "Tough crowd to impress," he said to Albatross, smiling a bit. His grandfather only replied with a and walked off, staying a short distance from Lagoon as she gave a tour. He's acting even weirder than normal, and that takes a lot. Fathom knew how much Albatross hated the queen, but for the past few days he had been even more silent than before. Nerves? Bitterness? Whatever it was, the prince hoped it would fade. When the 2 of them had training sessions and planning talks, it was like Lagoon never existed. It was like Albatross, the smiling young dragonet he used to be, long before many of the SeaWings attending the dinner were even hatched. But on nights like these, the elder SeaWing was the exact dragon others felt unsettled by, refusing to even walk next to. Albatross was the dragon everyone saw in their nightmares, and when they met his sharp gaze, and Fathom hated it. Lagoon slithered back after showing Eagle and Sunset the pavilion. "I have a fantastic surprise to show you," she said. "It is part of the reason we will make your best allies. We have magic on our side, a kind the other tribes do not use as we do." Sunset and Eagle exchanged confused and worried glances, following the queen up close to Albatross and Fathom. "Do you see that fountain?" Lagoon asked, pointing. Fathom looked over and saw it, a beautiful structure carved out of pearl and marble. Its water lifted itself up out of the bottom and rose to the top, never ending the flow. The fish inside danced in beautiful shapes of stars and anemone, a spectacle to be seen. "It was enchanted by one of our animi, who is with us now." Albatross grumbled, taking the short bow he rehearsed. The 2 SkyWings gawked, mouths wide open with disgust. "You have animus dragons, and you let them live? Do you even understand an ounce of what they are capable of?" Sunset said, stepping back with a quiet hiss of horror. "I know exactly what they are capable of," Lagoon said coolly. "It's why they are preparing and growing our next and greater palace for the tribe. I have so many plans for them. So much they will make for us. So much they will do for us." "You mean do for you," Albatross said suddenly. Lagoon froze, an unhidden anger finally creeping on her face. "Excuse me?" My magic is not yours, Lagoon, and the tests are over. There will be no training, no more eyes on dragons even while they sleep. You'll dig your claws out of my scales, or I will rip your talons out of you as I did your sisters. Fathom's heart dropped, beating erratically and coldly in his chest. It felt like an ice wing had fired frostbite directly into his lungs, and his chest struggled to rise and fall. What is he even saying? He had seen Albatross angry, but never so violent in his words. Though his tongue was a weapon, his claws were far more dangerous. Fathom felt his talons reaching up, wanting to perform any spell to stop this, but he quickly drove them down. Lagoon would kill him if he did anything right now. How dare you, Lagoon roared. I made you. You would be nothing without me. If I had intervened, your throat would have been slashed the moment a drop of blood was spilled from Sapphire. I created everything you are. You are mine, and you always will be. You ungrateful... Suddenly, the queen let out a soft gasp and a choking sound. She looked down, seeing a thin line of blood on her throat. The liquid only gushed more with a second, blood spilling down her midsection. But I'm the queen, she choked, before collapsing on the stone. Her body was already cold. Sunset and Eagle screamed, but their shouts were silenced as Albatross's knife plunged deep into their shoulders. The surrounding SeaWings saw the dripping blood and lifeless bodies and tried to run, but none were faster than the animus's blade. Fathom saw as Albatross's weapon soared through the air, stabbing and slicing at any inch of a dragon in its view. Indigo's here, he thought with a start. He whirled around in a panic, soon catching sight of her. She was crouched down, hovering over the lifeless body of Fathom's mother. When she spotted the young prince, she stared at him in disbelief, motioning for him to come. Albatross was distracted, eyes darting everywhere to watch the carnage. Fathom quickly bolted, claws scraping against the floor. He ducked under a table with Indigo, who was nearly in tears. What is he doing? She whispered, voice strained. Fathom could only stare at her, his muscles made of solid ice. Albatross, why are you doing this? Looking at his grandfather, Fathom tried to see the dragon who smiled at him during their alone training sessions. The dragon who clearly had so much going on inside his head that he thought he could never let out. The dragon full of pain, yet still standing. But here, in this moment, all he could take in were the ear-piercing screams of desperation and horror and the twisted smile on the animus's face. He's enjoying this. Fathom's claw touched some of the spilled blood in the pavilion, and he nearly vomited. No way Albatross could hurt so many dragons. If he can do this, can I too? Thought stung deeper than the pain of any wound. With this power, Albatross was massacring. But it was the same ability that ran through Fathom's blood, pumping through his brain into every muscle. What if I turn out like him with my magic? What if I do something like this? Albatross's knife continued to plunge itself in a dragon, searching for more hearts to stop. Indigo motioned toward the dock, pointing out a rack of spears they could take better cover behind. Fathom swallowed and nodded, creeping out from under the table for the first time. There were less screams now. The crying had mostly stopped. Still, he watched as the floating weapon made its way across the shoreline, darting erratically. If we can make it in the water without alerting him, we're free, Indigo said in a low whisper, as they crawled belly down, as low to the floor as they could manage. What if he sees us? Fathom asked. Indigo looked him deep in the eyes. Then we have to fight. Slowly but surely they made their way to the rack of fishing spears, finally able to breathe. Their lungs greedily took in all the air they could hold, inhaling in big yet quiet whispers. Fathom, Albatross said suddenly. Grandson, I know you're still alive, and that dragon you love too. The prince's heart skipped a beat. Everything around him was silent. It was only his grandfather's words now, and the frantic breathing of Indigo next to him. Trust me, I would remember killing you. The death of the queen is replaying in my mind, and I shiver with excitement at the look of fear in her eyes. Fathom did not even notice himself subconsciously inching toward Albatross, under Indigo, until Indigo laid a talon on his arm. Don't. He's too dangerous. You're not going to be able to save him, Fathom, she said tearfully. Didn't anyone teach you it was rude to ignore your family? Where are your manners, grandson? Fathom's breath came in weak. But at the thought of Indigo feeling pain, being attacked by the dragon he trusted, he couldn't let anyone touch her. even if it meant killing Albatross. Before she could protest, the SeaWing Prince stood up from near his hiding place. Albatross heard the scuffling of his talons and turned, knife raised midair next to him. "Fathom," he said, his voice like the hiss of a serpent. "You were always my favorite, but I can't have another animus living, not after the torture we experienced. You had to have known this was coming." Fathom only stood there in shock, breathing heavily. "What have you done?" "What have I done?" Albatross yelled, growling. "Lagoon brought this upon herself. Everyone here deserved what they got. This world torments what they fear, what they find different. I wanted to kill you before, because you never truly understood. There can never be another animus, not after Lagoon said she could replace me. I am better than her, Fathom. I am better than them all. She said you are more presentable. You're better, younger, smarter, faster, everything she said I'm not. I could have killed you first, but I couldn't dispose of you from afar. That wouldn't be satisfying at all. I want to see your face as you die. I want to see you, the one who the Queen never stopped speaking of, to suffer the same fate she brought herself. You will die a miserable death, Fathom, as the one you love is tortured before you, so you feel even just an ounce of the pain I have suffered all these years." "Why didn't you tell me how you really felt? I could have helped." Albatross cackled, the sound dry in his throat. "You're worth nothing compared to me. I tried to give you a chance, but your name rang in my ears day after day, even in my sleep, nearly being Lagoon's last breath. But now, I finally have you where I want you. I could have ended your life back all those days ago at the beach, and I do not know why I hesitated." Before Fathom could even process what Albatross said, the elder SeaWing dragged Indigo before them using his magic. His knife was ready, hovering closer by the second. She looked at Fathom, pleading for him to go. The prince didn't know what he did until it was too late. A rippling cry echoed across the pavilion. Lightning striking close by, the second fishing spear stabbed itself into Albatross's side. He grimaced, roaring like a wild animal. Blood began to color Albatross's pale scales, the fishing spear still digging deeper. For a moment, Fathom didn't even realize he had done anything, until he looked where Indigo's eyes were, his raised talons. His claw high in the air, mouth open and tongue controlled by parts of himself he didn't recognize. Albatross crumbled to the ground, coughing. He trembled, the knife now fallen by his side. Fathom let go of the spear with his magic, sending it flying far backward. "Grandson," Albatross said, a smile creeping on his withered face. "You're going to be the new me." Fathom crouched down to say something, but Albatross grew still before he could open his dry mouth. The pavilion was quiet. The crying and screams were gone. Everyone was gone. Indigo got up, stepping toward Fathom slowly. "Oh my gosh." "Yeah," Fathom said. Indigo looked around, eventually walking over to the discarded fishing spear Fathom had used. She held it in her talons, looking at him with an expression of understanding. A few surviving Royal SeaWings popped out of the water or from underneath to breathe. Everyone crowded around as Indigo told them how she killed Albatross. It was to protect him. Everyone would be terrified of two animi fighting, especially with that magic staying alive. As Indigo spoke to comfort the surviving dragons, Fathom could only manage to sit on the ground in silence. At first, before Indigo explained, the way they all looked at Fathom had the same horror everyone did when he got tested as an animus all those years ago. Magic had done all this. It wasn't his spells that caused the carnage, but it could have been. It still could be. He shuddered at the thought, trying to distract himself. Indigo was safe. His sister was safe. Albatross was dead. He wasn't going to hurt anybody anymore. But just because he isn't able to, doesn't mean I can't. Fathom's mind lingered on that thought, and the last words of his grandfather. "You're going to be the new me." What did it mean? How did he even know for sure? When the SeaWings entered their palace again and things slowly began to be resolved, he swore to Queen Pearl he would never use his magic again. But what if the words of his grandfather were right? Would he break that promise? That night when Fathom went to sleep, Albatross's gaze and the looks of terrified dragons haunted his dreams. It was almost like he caused the massacre. Albatross was everywhere, his eyes on all the dragons he saw. "I'm never going to let the world be like this. I'm never going to become him. I'm going to be better." And it was prediction for this video. I started off slowly with Fathom's Ascent, but unfortunately in this universe, Albatross is going to be kind of right. In part 2, we're going to meet with Clearsight and Darkstalker, but things are going to be different. I'm really excited to show you guys what's next with this. If you have any thoughts on what you want to happen, comment down below. Thank you guys so much for watching this all the way through, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!